Imagine, imagine paying $100,000 for a plate of food. Right.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
that is a lot for dinner.
right. But then you realize the dinner itself is completely irrelevant. I mean, you're sitting at your table, the lighting is gorgeous, they've rolled out this hand-painted green carpet that looks like a northern Italian garden.
Right, the whole spectacle.
Exactly, the whole thing. And while everyone else on the internet is obsessing over, like, who sat next to who at the Met, the actual real work is just starting for the executives.
Oh, absolutely. By, what, 7 a.m. the next morning?
Yeah, exactly. The celebrities are, still sleeping off the after parties. But this ruthless, high-stakes corporate marketing sprint just kicks into high gear.
Because that Monday night, I mean, the spectacle is really just the kickoff. Like, beneath all the tool and the diamonds, there's this hyper-efficient corporate machine running.
Right.
And the brands that actually get it, they don't treat the gala like a party. They treat it as, like, the most critical media mobilization of the entire year.
Which is wild to think about. And look, if you're an executive or a founder looking at your own marketing spend right now, and you're wondering how these elite brands just manufacture this algorithmic dominance, you are in the exact right place.
Yeah, we're really going to unpack the mechanics of it.
Right, we're going to reverse engineer that whole machine today. So we are basing today's deep dive on the work of Lilian Raji. Lilian Raji is a global luxury communications advisor, fractional COO, storyteller, columnist, and president of the Lilian Raji Agency, where for over 2 decades, she's helped CEOs and founders get their stories told in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, and more, while also creating effective strategies to attract multi-million-dollar investments. Her Forbes column, The Pursuit of Luxury, examines how brands use emotional marketing to capture their most passionate customers.
And that strategic lens is, it's just so crucial here because we're not doing fashion critiques today.
No, definitely not.
We're looking way past that. We want to understand the narrative equity being built. Like, the gala is literally an arena where brands test if they can turn a cultural moment into, well, measurable ROI.
Yeah, so let's start with the math behind that magic, because the reality of Tuesday morning is brutal and highly quantified.
Oh, totally.
I mean, brands are shelling out $350,000 for a table or, $100,000 for an individual ticket. You don't just authorize that kind of spend without expecting a massive return.
Right, you need hard numbers to justify that to a board.
Exactly. So we have to look at the metric the industry actually uses, which is MIV, or media impact value. And if you look at the launch metrics data, last year's gala generated $1.3 billion in total MIV.
Which is a staggering number. But we should probably break down how that MIV is actually calculated, right? Because it's not just some, like, fluffy vanity metric.
A literal algorithm.
Yeah, it assigns a specific dollar value to every single post, article, hashtag, all based on engagement rates, content quality, and the authority of the audience.
So, like, if a celebrity posts a photo, Launch Metrics calculates what a brand would literally have to pay in traditional ad spend to get that exact same engagement.
Exactly. So when Louis Vuitton claims $154.1 million of that MIV pie, they didn't just get lucky. They engineered that entirely.
Okay, I really want to look at the breakdown of that $154 million because it tells this wild story.
Yeah, the Blackpink numbers.
Yes. So Blackpink's Lisa, she's wearing custom Louis Vuitton, and she drove 6% of the entire gala's total MIV just through her own personal social channels.
Wow, just her own accounts.
Just hers. And then Louis Vuitton's own corporate channels captured 16%.
So wait, if you do the math on that, that leaves, what, 78%?
78% of their total value is entirely unaccounted for by their direct efforts.
Which is insane, but that remaining 78%, I mean, that is the holy grail of PR. It's all unprompted media. We're talking about fashion commentators, influencers, other celebrities, mainstream news outlets, all photographing and dissecting the look without Louis Vuitton paying them a dime.
Which honestly makes a $350,000 table look like an absolute bargain.
It really does.
It's like paying for the ticket is basically just buying the hardware. You're just buying the server.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. And then that manic 48-hour PR push, like literally flooding journalists' inboxes at 6 a.m. on Tuesday to make sure that 78% of unprompted media actually writes about you. That's the software that actually generates the ROI.
Yeah, hardware and software. The ticket gets you in the room, but the PR strategy in those 48 hours after, that dictates whether you actually exist in the global conversation.
I do want to push back on the tracking part of this, though.
Okay, sure.
Because look, I understand how an algorithm tracks a dress, right? It's visual. Lisa walks up the stairs, the cameras flash, and you have this undeniable visual evidence of the product.
Right, it's right there.
But I was looking through the source material, and you've got brands like Parfum de Marly there, and they're spraying Gabrielle Union and Misty Copeland with luxury perfume.
Yeah, I saw that.
You cannot photograph a top note.
No, you definitely can't.
So how on earth does a brand track the ROI of an invisible scent? I mean, are they just burning cash to say they were in the room?
Well, no, they track it by completely pre-packaging the narrative for the journalists. Like the PR team for a fragrance brand, they know they can't rely on the Getty Images feed.
Obviously not.
So they rely entirely on the pitch. By the time those fashion editors are waking up on Tuesday morning, they already have an email from Parfum de Marly.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and it details the exact scent profile used, how it complements the specific aesthetic of the celebrity's gown, the inspiration behind it. They literally connect the invisible product to the highly visible cultural moment.
So they're basically handing the journalists the exact copy they need to publish those Get the Look breakdown articles.
They're essentially doing the journalist's job for them. And Secret did the exact same playbook.
Oh, Beyoncé's brand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their PR team aggressively pushed this narrative that stylist Neil Farina used 4 specific Secret products for Beyoncé's hair. Because right after the red carpet, digital search volume for celebrity beauty routines just spikes massively.
So if your PR team isn't feeding that tactical info to editors by Tuesday morning, you basically just paid 6 figures for a very expensive plate of food.
Yeah, you didn't buy a marketing campaign, you just bought dinner.
Which means you can't just buy massive MIV with some generic red carpet appearance.
Yeah.
You actually have to engineer a hyper-specific story.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to the whole creative challenge of the 2026 theme. The theme was Fashion is Art. And the directive for the attendees was to prioritize materiality over wearability.
Right, and that theme basically shifts the entire objective.
How so?
Well, the goal is no longer just to look conventionally pretty or handsome. The mandate is to participate in an embodied art form. You have to push the boundaries of what even constitutes a garment.
And the execution we saw was just wild. Like, let's look at Sabrina Carpenter.
Oh, the Dior look.
Yeah. She showed up in this glossy Dior gown made entirely out of celluloid frames. And they weren't just random frames either. They were pulled directly from the 1954 Audrey Hepburn classic film, Sabrina.
I mean, that level of detail is just story architecture at its absolute finest.
It's brilliant.
Celluloid is literal film stock. So by using it, Dior answers the whole materiality prompt of the theme, but at the same time, they build this historical and cinematic resonance around their celebrity partner's namesake.
And it wasn't just Dior doing this. Heidi Klum worked with the special effects artist Mike Marino to become a literal living marble sculpture.
Yeah, the prosthetics on that were incredible.
She spent hours in makeup to reference classical works like The Veiled Virgin. And then you have Venus Williams, who basically turned the red carpet into a global press conference.
Oh, with the earrings.
Yeah, she wore these earrings that just said 6%, which highlighted the fact that only 6% of sports science research is focused on women.
Which is just such a strong statement. And every single one of those examples transcends simple product placement. They all arrived with a clear thesis statement.
Even the beauty brands, right?
Exactly. Like Elizabeth Debicki with Misha Shahzada and Jung Semo, or Chase Sui Wonders with Ilia Beauty. They aren't just doing makeup. They are constructing specific aesthetic arguments that editors can actually dissect.
Okay, but I have to ask a really pointed question on behalf of the executives listening right now.
Go for it.
Let's look at Beyoncé. She makes her first return to the gala in a decade, and she's wearing this custom Olivia Rusting nude gown encrusted with a diamond skeleton.
Which was iconic.
It's Beyoncé. Her mere presence shatters the internet. So why does a brand need to do the intellectual heavy lifting of building a celluloid dress for Sabrina Carpenter when you could literally just dress a megastar?
Because celebrity placement without story architecture is literally just expensive decoration.
Oh, that's good. Expensive decoration.
Yeah, because the question a CMO should be asking isn't just, how do we get an A-lister in our clothes? The strategic question has to be, what does this look say about our brand, this celebrity, and this exact cultural moment?
Right.
Like, Dior didn't just put Sabrina Carpenter in a pretty dress. They told the market that they understand her cultural positioning so well that they custom-built a historically resonant artifact just for her.
Wow.
That intellectual depth is what generates that 78% unprompted media value. You have to give the commentators something to actually analyze, not just something to look at.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But Dior's custom celluloid strategy kind of reveals a deeper issue here.
What's that?
You can't just buy that level of historical resonance with the checkbook.
Yeah.
You have to actually be invited to play the game in the first place.
Mm.
Which brings us to this fascinating tension in the source material. The currency of exclusivity versus cold, hard cash.
Oh, the gatekeeping. Yeah, this is where the Met Gala totally diverges from almost every other major marketing platform out there. Like, let's compare it to the Super Bowl for a second.
The Super Bowl is super simple. $10 million buys you 30 seconds of airtime.
Right.
It honestly doesn't matter who you are or what your brand ethos is. If your check clears the bank, you're on the screen.
Exactly. But the Met Gala operates on a completely different paradigm. Anna Wintour controls that guest list with absolute authority.
Total control.
She approves or declines attendees regardless of their corporate valuation, because exclusivity is the fundamental precondition of luxury. Like, if anyone with a massive bank account can just buy their way in, the cultural value of the whole event plummets.
Okay, but money clearly still talks, though.
Well, yes.
I mean, just look at the trajectory of Amazon and Jeff Bezos. Back in 2012, Amazon was mostly perceived as this aggressive bookseller with huge retail aspirations.
Right, they weren't luxury.
No. But Bezos seemed to realize very early on that cultural proximity to the Met Gala confers a very specific type of elite legitimacy. And fast forward 14 years to 2026, Jeff and Lauren Sanchez Bezos are honorary chairs, and they reportedly underwrote the entire event for $10 to $20 million.
And their trajectory just proves this fundamental rule of luxury gatekeeping, which is the further outside the core fashion industry you begin, the significantly larger your check has to be to cross the moat.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah, we're seeing tech's wealthiest figures, companies like OpenAI, Meta, Snapchat, buying these $350,000 tables, because they are purchasing proximity to cultural relevance.
Right. The fashion houses buy tables to validate their existing luxury status to their customers.
Exactly. And the tech companies buy tables to acquire that status from scratch.
It's such a brilliant contrast to how Saint Laurent played the game this year.
Oh, yes.
Because they didn't just write a massive check to be a highly visible honorary chair like Amazon did. They actually sponsored the exhibition catalog itself.
Which is such a subtle flex.
Totally. And they controlled the visual narrative by dressing Madonna and surrounding her on the carpet with 7 scarf bearers.
Yeah.
They collected massive cultural credit, but they completely avoided the headline risk.
Yeah, I did.
Which makes me wonder, at what point does accepting a $20 million check from an outsider like Bezos dilute the very exclusivity that makes the luxury ecosystem valuable in the first place?
I mean, that is literally the existential crisis the gala is navigating right now. Money and cultural cachet are actively trading places.
Wow.
The danger for any luxury platform is that when it becomes transparently transactional, it loses the mystique that made it desirable in the first place.
Right, the magic dies.
Exactly. Saint Laurent navigated that tension perfectly by embedding themselves in the art of the event, the physical catalog, the aesthetic presentation of a music icon. They bought lasting cultural capital.
Whereas Bezos basically bought the infrastructure.
He bought the infrastructure. And as the events of Monday night showed us, buying the infrastructure does not buy you immunity from public opinion.
No, it definitely doesn't. Because the friction of outsiders entering this space is severe. Crossing that moat with massive wealth brings incredible reputational risk. Like, you can buy access to a red carpet, but you absolutely cannot buy universal respect.
Yeah, visibility and reverence are two completely different assets.
And the friction this year were highly visible and very messy for brand managers to navigate. Just to report on the source material here without taking any sides, the Bezos sponsorship triggered massive protests across New York.
Yeah, it was everywhere.
There was union-led counter-programming, literally branded the Ball Without Billionaires. It was co-hosted by the fashion stylist Gabriella Carefa-Johnson and actress Lisa Ann Walter, and they actually had Amazon delivery drivers and warehouse workers walking a runway chanting "Tax the Rich."
I mean, that is a direct ideological collision playing out in real time, right on the doorstep of the ultimate luxury event.
It really is. And we also saw activists from an Everyone Hates Elon group leaving fake urine at the museum.
Wild.
And the guest list itself seemed impacted. Like, major A-list figures like Zendaya were noticeably absent. Bella Hadid dropped a very pointed like on a social media video criticizing Bezos' involvement.
The tension was palpable.
The tension was so high that Met CEO Max Holland had to go on CNN for diplomatic crisis management. He had to clarify that while they were grateful for the financial support, the Met Gala was absolutely not Amazon's show.
Well, this friction highlights a very quiet but very powerful mechanism in the luxury world, the fashion publicist's blacklist.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, these publicists act as a protective barrier for their brands. When a brand calculates its risk, the fear of alienating its core, passionate customer base far outweighs the purchasing power or the financial sponsorship of any single controversial billionaire.
Because it hits the bottom line.
Exactly. If associating with a heavily protested sponsor causes a client who spends $50,000 a year with your house to suddenly find your brand distasteful, you lose. It's a strict reputational risk calculation.
I know.
And Edward Campbell from the creative agency General Idea highlighted this in a PR dispatch right before the event. He noted that the gala needs to tread delicately and intentionally, platform individuals and brands that are perceived as authentic change makers.
You know, this is exactly the kind of problem Lilian helps brand leaders solve directly. Through her fractional CMO and communications advisory work, she works with founders and executives to close the gap between what a brand is built and how the market perceives it, whether that's clarifying positioning, rebuilding the narrative, or aligning leadership around one story. If you're listening to this and thinking, this sounds like us, her website at lilianraji.com is where to start.
Yeah, closing that gap is absolutely critical, especially in luxury. Because when public perception turns against a brand due to, like, a misaligned partnership or a clumsy cultural moment, no amount of raw marketing spend can reverse it overnight.
You can't just buy your way out of it.
No, you really can't. To survive in that environment, you need a highly structural playbook.
Okay, well, let's build that playbook right now. Let's pull this entire analysis together into an actionable framework for the executive listening.
Let's do it.
We've looked at the MIV metrics, we explored the story architecture with Sabrina Carpenter, we've seen the gatekeeping, and we analyzed the reputational risks. So how does a brand actually execute a flawless Met Gala strategy?
Well, if we synthesize the strategies of the brands that truly captured that 78% unprompted media value, it comes down to 4 distinct rules.
Okay, what's rule number 1?
Rule number 1, start your sprint in June.
Wait, meaning a full 11 months before the actual event.
Precisely. The brands that won the first Monday in May, they spent a year cultivating deep relationships with the stylists, the colorists, the creative directors, and the talent.
So it's not a last-minute scramble.
Never. When a celebrity steps onto the carpet in custom couture, the audience can tell if that relationship was built over 12 months or just, rushed together in 12 days. Organic partnerships generate positive press, whereas transactional rentals just generate cynicism.
Because audiences are incredibly savvy. They can smell forced sponsored content from a mile away.
Exactly. Which brings us to rule 2, and this goes back to the Sabrina Carpenter example. Ask the right questions.
Right. Emphasize story architecture over simple celebrity placement.
Yes. The defining question is never, who can we afford to dress? It absolutely must be, how does dressing this specific person in this specific way advance our long-term brand narrative?
Got it. And rule 3 is all about mastering that software we discussed earlier, right? Win the 48-hour window.
Yes, the context surrounding your look must arrive completely pre-packaged for journalists. The designer collaborations, the origin stories of the materials used, the cultural references embedded in the silhouette, all of that needs to be sitting in a fashion editor's inbox by 6 a.m. on Tuesday.
Because if your team is waiting until after the red carpet to figure out your pitch, the news cycle has already moved on without you.
You're already dead in the water.
Right. And finally, rule 4, which honestly might be the most fascinating from a pure business growth perspective, leverage geographic white space.
Oh, Valentino executed this brilliantly.
Tell me about that.
So they recently named Freen as their first female Thai brand ambassador, and they brought her to the gala in custom couture.
Okay.
That single strategic move generated $19.5 million in media impact value. But the key here is where that value actually came from. It was almost entirely generated from media outlets, influencers, and commentators in Southeast Asia.
Wow. So they took a notoriously New York-centric, Western-focused event, and they used it to trigger a media avalanche in a completely different hemisphere.
Exactly. They essentially conquered a massive, highly lucrative geographic region for the cost of a table and a custom dress.
It makes that $350,000 entry fee look like pocket change when you realize they just established a dominant cultural foothold in Southeast Asia overnight.
It really does.
It proves that while the public treats the Met Gala as a fashion show, The executives treat the morning after as strictly business. It's for brands that are executing flawlessly, the ones who recognize, to borrow the core philosophy from Lilian's firm, when you know it's time for more.
Operating at this altitude requires an incredible balancing act. I mean, you have to synthesize the artistic expression of the theme, the brutal commerce of the ROI, and the intense public scrutiny of the cultural moment.
Which brings us to a final lingering thought for you to take back to your own executive teams. This entire deep dive reveals a fundamental truth about the highest echelons of luxury. The physical product itself, the celluloid dress, the invisible perfume, the jewelry is no longer the main offering. The product is the narrative ecosystem built around it.
Absolutely.
But ask yourself this, if your brand was stripped of its physical products tomorrow, what narrative equity would you have left to sell?
The answer to that question is really what separates the decorators from the architects.
To read the full article on Forbes and explore more of this incredible strategy, go to forbes.com/Lilian Raji. And to explore her additional analysis and advisory work, head over to lilianraji.com. You should also connect with her on LinkedIn and follow her on Instagram and YouTube. The X-ray machine for marketing might be broken and the landscape of luxury might be constantly shifting, but if you have the right architecture in place, the path forward is incredibly clear.